this review, I will not be wearing a Star Wars cape. I will instead be wearing a robe that wears the insignia of the Empire and a shirt about one of the greatest villains and the leader of the Imperial Army. Because today, the film in question is Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back. Not only one of the greatest Star Wars films ever made, no, scratch that, the best Star Wars film ever made, but also one of the best films ever made, period. Now, by now, everyone's heard the great tale of how this is the, magnum opus of the Star Wars films. Probably one of the greatest, if not the greatest, sci-fi film ever made. How it's literally defined what Star Wars should be as a genre. And that's true and all. That's not what people were saying back in 1980. Oh, no. If you read either the critic reviews or just ask people who grew up at the time or went to go see the film at the time, and I have heard from people, and I have accounts from people that have said, oh no, people did not like this movie back in 1980 because of the direction it took. It went on a sad note. It really wasn't the big, bright, colorful, fun action film that the first film was. It was much more of a darker, slower film. It definitely took different routes than people had expected from a Star Wars film. People were kind of expecting Star Wars 2. Instead, what they got was something far different. So, The Empire Strikes Back. What made this film so polarizing to people at the beginning, but have since come to love it now? Well, first off, I must address that the previous director and writer were not involved in this film. Well, okay, not that they weren't involved, but they did not make this film. Oh, no. This was not written nor directed by George Lucas. This was directed by Irvin Kershner and written by Lawrence Kasdan, who would go on to write Return of the Jedi. He wrote Force Awakens, and he has taken a big part in later Star Wars scripts, including Solo. Lawrence Kasdan has been a major writer in the Star Wars universe, and he even wrote the Indiana Jones films. He wrote Raiders, Temple, and Crusade. So, how does this particular film lend itself? Well, let's just say that it is definitely the darkest of the Star Wars films. It definitely has the heaviest tone. I know you could argue Revenge of the Sith. I argue this did it way better. But it also has better character arcs and universe expansion. That's one thing this film does brilliantly. It expands its universe and its characters. It takes us from, these desert-ish looking planets to these somewhat nice looking planets. I mean, we still have a really beautiful looking planet with Bespin and Cloud City. But, of course, we have the snowy world of Hoth and the swamp-ridden planet of Dagobah. And I like how, not only with expanding the universe, they expanded the characters. Everyone is forced to go to a darker place than in the previous film. They're forced to answer tougher questions. Han Solo is finally taken out of that comfort zone of being the cocky, arrogant pilot. The unbeatable, uncatchable Han Solo, as the Empire is constantly unstable. The Millennium Falcon is constantly breaking. This ship won't work. They're forced to repair it in the midst of combat. They have to fly this broken ship through an asteroid field while TIE fighters are chasing them. And when he's finally apprehended by the Empire, again, it's character growth. He is no longer that cocky, arrogant pilot that can no longer be taken hostage. He is now forced into this very dangerous game of hide and seek, as he does all he can do just to stay a step ahead of the Empire. But, just like in the first film, and definitely taken to another level here, as the title suggests, the Empire is bigger and stronger than ever. Even without their big mega weapon in the Death Star, they feel more powerful in this film. They feel like an overwhelming force that the rebels just cannot defeat. The Battle of Hoth executes that perfectly with these giant walkers that just can't be beaten. The rebels are firing with every gun they have, but the walkers just barrel down on them. Even the speeders, which have a better chance against them, they're basically taken down in 2 hits with these things. And of course, we have that iconic theme that is established in this film. Before that, the Empire didn't really have a theme. The villains didn't have a theme. Now it's the most iconic villain theme in history, possibly. This big, cool, overmarching thing with these blaring trumpets with the Empire. And it's iconic because of that. Vader finally gets his own theme, and I must talk about Darth Vader. This character has definitely one of the best character expansions I've ever seen in a sequel, let alone for a villain. But in this film, we learn more about Vader's powers and the rage that is lying within him. Like when he chokes out one of his own admirals just because he messed up. Just because he he executed an order Vader told him not to. He kills him anyway, leading to one of my favorite Vader lines.
You have failed me for the last time, Admiral. Captain Piet.
Yes, my lord.
Make ready to land our troops beyond their energy field, then deploy the fleet so that nothing gets off the system. You are in command now, Admiral Piet.
Thank you, Lord Vader.
I like how then when he accepts the role to Admiral Piet, he's like, yes, Lord Vader. Like, he's scared. He's like, okay, so either I do things right, or I end up like this guy. And he demonstrates that in a later scene when Captain Nita, who is the commander of the Imperial vessel that was hunting the Falcon, loses it, and he has to apologize to Lord Vader. And this is what happens.
Apology accepted, Captain Nita.
At least he was nice enough to accept his apology. We also see for the first time who keeps Vader on a leash. The Emperor. Who is this mysterious cloaked figure. This guy who hides in the shadows, giving his mysterious orders. Lord Vader. Yes, the Emperor. We finally meet him for the first time. And while it is clear that while the Emperor is above Vader in terms of a rank, Vader is still clearly the main villain of this trilogy, of the main Star Wars trilogy. He's the main villain. And with Vader's expansion also came Luke's expansion of character, especially like when he's captured by this mysterious Wampa creature on Hoth. I like how, again, as we know, he's still learning about the Force and being a Jedi Knight. He still doesn't know everything. He's still learning. I do like that scene where he Force reaches for his lightsaber. He didn't know that was going to work. We'd never seen that before in a Star Wars film. Keep in mind, again, this was long before comics and novels and anything like that. This was the other media we had besides the first film. So we had to have Luke reaching out, just trying to get his lightsaber. And when he gets it, it's like, oh, cool, we didn't know they could do that. And I bet Luke's at the reaction like, oh, that's cool. I didn't know I could do that either. And and he cuts himself free, and he takes down the Wampa by cutting its arm off. And I like how Han Solo, when he goes out for the Tauntaun, when he goes out to save Luke on his Tauntaun, says this.
Your Tauntaun will freeze before you reach the first marker.
Then I'll see you in hell.
That's the Han Solo we know and love. But there is a later scene when Luke goes out during the Battle of Hoth. Han has this look of, this isn't going to go well. Like, something's going to happen here. Like, there are dark times ahead. This little exchange he has with Luke, you can tell, man, something's going to go wrong. And the way the Empire just destroys the Rebel base, and they march through, and again, it acquires with the film's title. And it continues to expand on this conflict that the Rebellion, even though they're technically the good guys, and the good guys always have to win in movies, it still establishes that they are still, as said, a rebellion against the Empire. They're a smaller force with not as good equipment, not as good weapons, guns, or numbers. The Empire is still superior, and in many ways that military is way better than theirs, even though the Stormtroopers still can't hit a thing. But it also expands upon Han and Leia a little bit. As I already previously mentioned, Han is forced out of his role as that arrogant pilot that cannot be captured, and he's kind of forced into deadly game of cat and mouse with the Empire. But Leia also shows some more character strengths here. In the first film, while she was an okay character, Leia was more of just, the strong-hearted rebel who wanted to do the right thing. In this film, we get more genuine fear from her. As having been held prisoner of the Empire, she knows what the Empire is going to do if they find them. And she's the one that delivered the Death Star plans to the rebellion itself. She knows what the Empire will do if they catch them. And she's afraid of what they can do and what Vader can do. And that's a good thing. It establishes that sense of fear. They always have some great comedy between Han and Leia. There is some of that, that romantic, tension, where they act like they just don't like each other. He can't stand her being uptight. She can't stand that he's just so loose and cocky. And, I like how they clash on that level. And I know that the chemistry isn't like the greatest thing of all time. I mean, it's good chemistry. We've seen that before, where couples just kind of, have that bickering, but you can tell, nah, they like each other, even though they're constantly arguing. And, oh my gosh, it's just great how, by expanding in the universe, he expands his characters. Now, while we have that amazingly intense chase scene with also that cool asteroid field, and I like how Han's uncertain. He has no idea if they're going to get through this. He's just like, alright, but hey, they'd be crazy to follow us, right? And they just try their best to escape. They're just doing what they can to ward off the Empire. And they fly into this little cave where they are captured by an exogorth, or a space slug. This giant big creature that just reaches through. And I like that, how, this is no cave. Like how when he shoots it, it shakes. And you can tell there's something off about it. Now let's talk about Dagobah. I love the lighting, camera work, and the color palette choice for this particular planet. Now, I like how the lighting is dark and dense. There's something off about this planet. This world just feels so gross and kind of out of nowhere. How every other planet in the films feels brightly lit with some big expressive colors. Even the evil ones like Mustafar in Revenge of the Sith had that big colorful red and orange palette. Here, there's a lot of gross colors. In fact, there's a lot of these disgusting, pukish colored greens with washed out gray. There's a lot of use of black and dark blue here, which establishes the atmosphere perfectly. There's a lot of this disgusting stuff lying beneath the planet. And I like how when Luke and R2 land, they're uneasy. They know what their mission is, to find this mysterious Master Yoda who will help complete Luke's Jedi training. But all they know is, where have we landed? That's their first question when they land on Dagobah. It's not, alright, let's go find Yoda. It's like, where are we? What planet is this? Where are these creatures who are trying to eat us? Where are we? And I like how when they establish this camp, Luke and R2 are just trying to gather themselves. They're not even off on their mission. They're just like, look, let's just try to take in the reality here. And of course, we get to meet Yoda.
I don't know. I feel like... Like we're being watched.
Oh, wait, put your weapon. I mean you no harm. I am wondering, why are you here?
I'm looking for someone.
Looking? Found someone you have, I would say. Hmm?
Right. Well, if we could get our ship out, we would, but we can't. So why don't you just...
not get your ship out.
Hey, get out of there!
And I like how you don't know this is Yoda. You're just like, who's this crazy little space hermit thing? Which, for the record, George Lucas has not disclosed what Yoda's species is. He's never disclosed where he came from, what he is, what his species is. And now with The Mandalorian out, I think we're about to get an expansion on what Yoda exactly is. But still, yes, I love this. How you just see this cool, funny little space hermit who makes these funny comments. He's throwing stuff all over. Stuff like, oh, you cannot get your ship out. Or, looking, found someone you have, I would say. It's this cool, funny little space hermit. And I like how later, when you do find out that indeed it is Yoda, it's like, was that like a patience test? Was he just trying to see how patient Luke was with him? And to be fair, even though Luke justifiably was a little annoyed, I mean, hey, he didn't hurt him or anything. In fact, we do have this funny little exchange.
Needed to get out of this slimy mud hole.
Mud hole? Slimy? My home, this is.
R2, let him have it. R2!
And I like how, with that exchange between Obi-Wan and Yoda, debating if Luke is even old enough, I mean, at the proper age, because Yoda argues he's too old to begin training. I think that it's not just establishing that Yoda's a harsh teacher, that he's just this wise Jedi Master who won't just train anyone. He has to see a potential in student, but also gives insight into who Yoda is, because as the puppet is detailed, he's old. He's not this spry warrior like they described him as this grand Jedi Master who led big armies. And he's just not that anymore. Now he's an old man who just lives the rest of his life in hiding. He tries to stay out of conflict. And it is possible. There is a sense of hesitation there. Maybe Yoda is hesitant to train a student again, because he knows it's draining and that it does require a ton of effort. But when he finally does agree to train Luke, I love this little line here.
I'm not afraid.
You will be. You will be.
That sets up the tone right away. When he says that he'll be afraid, you are immediately intrigued. What does he mean by that? What testing drills and trials does Yoda have in store for Luke? And we have those cool scenes, like we have the physical training where he's having Luke hop among the woods at great speeds and he's telling him how to move quickly. And he's describing the way that the Force can flow with a Jedi or Sith. And how he describes how a Jedi uses the Force compared to how a Sith does. And I like how, again, it's just a fun little exchange where Luke asks all these questions. You can tell he's intrigued and he wants to know more. And then we have a very cool, yet somewhat confusing scene where Luke senses this dark presence coming from a cave deep within the planet. And Yoda tells him how it's strong with the dark side of the Force and a domain of evil. And then we do have this little line. I don't know if people really give this enough attention as it is, but check out this little line right here.
Your weapons. You will not need them.
Yoda tells Luke he will not need his weapons, but he takes them anyway, showing that he is still learning. He's stubborn. He still thinks he can take this by himself. He is not listening, and it costs him. When he meets Darth Vader, and he beats Darth Vader in a duel, and then the helmet explodes to reveal his face inside the helmet. It's very confusing. And I guarantee you, for audiences back in 1980, it probably might have been. But at the same time, you find yourself intrigued. What does this mean? Why did that happen? How come Yoda said don't take weapons? And that's what this film does. It expands these questions. And it even expands on the Force as well. Now you're wondering what the Force has the capability to show. And there's those brilliant scenes where Luke is training with Yoda, and Luke sees visions, and he describes the city in the clouds, and he describes his friends writhing in pain, and Yoda tries to teach him how to calm his mind. And then we get that scene with the X-Wing, where it sinks into the swamp, and Luke tries to lift it out with his Force powers, but he can't. But not because he's not strong enough. He doesn't believe. And we have some of the most iconic Yoda lines, such as...
Try.
No. Try not. Do. Or do not. There is no try.
And
I can't. It's too big.
Size matters not. Look at me. Judge me by my size, do you?
finally, one of the best smites I have ever heard in a film.
I don't believe it.
That is why you fail.
Yoda is such a good teacher. And I do like how Luke abandons his training. He rushes off to try to save his friends. And while it is out of good intention he wants to save them, there is a sense of arrogance there. He feels that he can just run off, having not yet finished his training, confront the Empire, and somehow win. And they even warn him, if you do this, you're going to have to face Vader, and you will do it alone. There will be no help. No one can interfere. You'll be left on your own. Yet he goes off anyway. And I like that. I do like that, how you can tell this isn't going to go well. But there's also an intriguing setup with this particular line.
Hope.
No. There is another.
Another? As in another Skywalker? What could that mean? And that's spectacular. And of course we do now arrive on Cloud City, where the filmmaking again shines through. The camera work goes back to those big wide, letting us take in this grand scope of this beautiful looking city. The color palettes are switched out here for more bright colors with a soft sunset type orange with these cool whites, giving you this feeling of a clean city. It's a big departure from the previous dirty and dark and black looking Dagobah. We get this clean looking city, and the camera work suggests this. It suggests that this is a safe place. We're safe from the horrors of the war between the Empire and the Rebellion. This is a haven, only of course for it to be wrecked like this.
Forever.
We would be honored if you would join us.
I had no choice there.
Now, quick detour here. There's a scene that introduces us to some of the best bounty hunters and most famous characters in the Star Wars lore. Bosk, IG-88, and of course, Boba Fett, the most famous bounty hunter in the lore, where he has been revived, he's been given expansion after expansion, he is leagues better than his dad, and we have this cool little line when Vader meets him.
Falcon, you are free to use any methods necessary, but I want them alive. No disintegrations.
As you wish.
Lord Vader.
Again, we know nothing about who this guy is, but just by that little exchange with Vader, we can tell Boba Fett has a reputation, and this guy means business. No disintegrations. That means that Boba is probably one of the most cruel and harshest bounty hunters to ever be in the galaxy, and there's a reason the Empire hired him. And I do like this scene where the Empire just tortures Han Solo, and like how he even mentions that they don't even ask him any questions. They aren't interrogating him, they're just torturing him like, no. There's no interrogations here. We're just here to make you feel a ton of pain. And of course we do have this iconic Vader line.
I am altering the deal. Pray I don't alter it any further.
This is also where we're introduced, I'm sorry I didn't mention this earlier, the character of Lando Calrissian, played by Billy D. Williams. Now, as I had said in my Solo review, they are very similar, Han and Lando. They're both cocky, they're both gamblers, they both have this sense of arrogance to them, and they both try to be cool with the ladies. And Lando's obviously better at it than Han. Billy D. Williams did a brilliant job playing the role, but I also like how Lando, they show that with this deal he's made with the Empire to keep them away from Cloud City, how Lando is realizing that this deal that he's made with the devil is not the deal he wanted. He made a deal with the devil, and he's not liking it. Like how when Vader asks him,
Vader, what about Leia and the Wookiee?
They must never again leave this city.
That was never a condition of our agreement, nor was giving hand to this bounty hunter.
Perhaps you think you're being treated unfairly?
No.
I do like those scenes. How Lando is, you can tell he is not exactly okay with this. And he hates doing this. It's killing him because Han was a good friend of his. And he was not expecting this. This deal backfired miserably. And now his friend has to pay the price for it just so Lando can keep his hands clean and out of the war. And we have that iconic scene in the carbonation room where they put Han into carbonite freeze. Now, I'm going to talk about this room later in a bit because it's the filmmaking at its best. But first, I have to talk about the acting here. How Han tries to keep Chewie calm through this awful ordeal as Chewbacca freaks out. And then we have this awesome little exchange where Han goes an infinitely better character just on these 2 words.
I love you.
I know.
Boom. Han becomes an infinitely better character, and he's more interesting because of it. How we get this sense that maybe he isn't just a cocky smuggler. Maybe he actually does have feelings. Maybe he does try to connect with people. Yeah, he hides under a lot of smugness, but we can tell there's an emotional center there. There's a vulnerability there. And maybe that him being stripped of that title, maybe him being reduced down to just someone running away from the Empire has forced that vulnerability to show in his character. And it fits. We have that iconic scene where Han is frozen in carbonite and just the loud clang when that thing hits the floor. There's fear to it, as in the Empire is winning. And they're not just winning, they are making the rebellion pay. But not just the rebellion. They are making the people who were responsible for the destruction of the Death Star, the people who flew in, blew up the Death Star, and took their plans, they are making them pay. And that is brilliant writing by Lawrence Kasdan. Now, we have that scene where Luke sneaks his way onto Cloud City. Now, what I like about this film, and I had to touch on this, our characters are separated for a majority of the film. In the first Star Wars, even though they aren't really even that united until the end of the 3rd act, in Empire, they are separated most of the time. Han and Leia are just desperately trying to flee while Luke is off training. And then when Luke comes to save them, Han's in the grasp of the Empire, while Leia, Lando, and Chewbacca, they're just trying to leave. They're just trying to save themselves. And Luke is all alone, leading to when he finally goes into that carbonite room. This is when the lighting in this film becomes some of the best in cinematic history. That dark, dark blue with very soft and hard lighting combos, with the appropriate amount of shadow, letting you feel the fear and the tension. The choice colors of the oranges help the characters stick out. We just have that silhouette of Vader with this amazing line.
The Force is with you, young Skywalker. But you are not a Jedi yet.
The lighting in this room just keeps that tension up. And notice how Vader fights Luke. Look how they fight. Luke is in a ready stance right from the start, and he's sort of in a shaky situation. And he attacks first. He's aggressive and jumps right in, but Vader is calm the whole time. Luke is angry. Luke is filled with hatred, and Vader's taking advantage of it. He can tell Luke is not experienced in this form of combat, and Vader is going to take advantage of that, whereas Vader is a Sith Master. And we have those scenes where Luke still pulls off some impressive stunts against Vader, but it is very clear that Vader is the superior force. Luke is sweating, he's bleeding, and he's desperately just trying to keep in touch with Vader, and Vader just bears down on him. And then We have, after Vader cuts off Luke's hand, forcing Luke to pin himself to a wall, comes the best twist in cinema history.
No. I am your father.
It's not true. That's impossible.
Search your feelings. You know it to be true.
If you look up videos of kids' reactions to it on YouTube, they're shocked and taken back. They have no idea what they're in for, and now the lines between good and evil are blurred. Now we don't know. Like, what? But we were told that Anakin Skywalker had been killed by Vader. What did Obi-Wan mean? And Luke, with his reaction, he loses all hope, and he is forced to come to grips with the pain of realization that this father that he had never known, and that for years he'd been told how great of a hero he was, is now the darkest and most intimidating villain in the galaxy. And he's forced to come to terms with it. And I like how when Luke throws himself off the tower, he doesn't know whether or not he's going to live. He was just going to die. It's just through plot convenience that there happened to be a hole there. I hate how in the special editions they threw in a scream. I'm like, no, because Luke looked at Vader with the sense of, I'd rather die than join you. And he doesn't like slip and fall. He actually just lets go. It's not like he slipped and fell. He let go. He would rather die than let Vader take him. And we have that awesome scene where Luke reaches out to Leia through the Force, and Leia feels his cry for help. Automatically, we remember what Yoda said, and we're asking ourselves, is Leia the other Jedi, the other Skywalker he spoke of? Because they have this instant connection, and it's brilliantly done. The camera work, as it tightens in on Leia's face, there's brilliant cuts as we can see Luke reaching out to her, and just her expression alone, it's brilliant and it's amazing. And for the record, I still toy that fight on Cloud City is the best lightsaber duel in Star Wars history because of the weight behind it, the gritty feel behind it, the stunt work, and the pain. Unlike Revenge of the Sith, there was legitimate pain here. There was danger as Luke is just being overpowered by this villain. It isn't two equal combatants. There is more tension when one is actually better than the other. There's tension there because you feel Luke just desperately trying to stay in touch with Vader, who clearly can tell Luke has no experience in saber combat. The ending has them racing off to find Han Solo, but we're left asking, what are we to do now? The Empire has just crushed the Rebel bases, the fleet is left on the run, and they captured Han Solo. What are we to do now? I wonder what people were wondering waiting those 3 years between 1980 and 1983 for Return of the Jedi. I wonder what that was like. But nonetheless, guys, as I've stated, the filmmaking is so much better than the first one. The writing is better than the first. Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back did the one thing that very few can do. It not only matched its original predecessor, it surpassed it. Empire Strikes Back is one of the perfect movies. I can find very little wrong with this. Sure, if you nitpick, you could find maybe something that doesn't work. But for me, Empire Strikes Back is the best Star Wars movie to date, and you can't convince me otherwise. It is the best Star Wars film to date. Anyway, guys, that is it for me. That is my opinion on Empire Strikes Back. Please let me know what you thought down in the comments below about Empire Strikes Back, and which do you think is better? Star Wars or Empire? Which one do you think is better? Next Star Wars review, I have a couple Christmas videos coming out. Next Star Wars video is going to be a holiday special Ewok films combo. I know those technically aren't canon, but I might as well touch on them. Anyway, guys, that's it from me. Please let me know down in the comments below. I will see you nerds later.